Read, Return, Repeat. I am one of your co-hosts, Daniel, PB Adult Programming Librarian at Wichita Public Library, here with...
Wow, it just kept going. I'm Sarah. I am the other co-host of this wonderful podcast, Read, Return, Repeat. And I also work at the Advanced Learning Library.
Yeah.
Like you didn't know that already.
We might have new listeners.
That's a good point. That
found
found us. Oh.
Because this episode, we're talking about one of the ReadICT categories, Lost and Found.
Yep, a book about something lost or found. And our author writes about books that do both.
Yeah.
So what's a fun fact about lost or found items, Daniel?
I think a huge, if we're talking library, I think one of the biggest lost and found items is water bottles, which I have done my considerable amount of loot.
I do it while I'm traveling. Like I will always leave a water bottle. I will lose a water bottle, like on the train, or I've left one on a plane before.
Water bottles and sunglasses.
And you can't actually go back on the plane to get your water bottle. They have to do it once you've disembarked.
Have you? Yeah, I recently lost one of my favorite water bottles. It was a Nalgene I got at a music festival.
Classic. Nalgene's a classic choice.
I remember leaving it in this I was at a film festival and I left it in a lounge and I had to walk up down a hill. I remember figuring out I lost it and I looked at the hill, how far. And then I was like,
would you ever drink from a found water bottle?
No. I mean, maybe if I put it. Okay, if I found a legit Stanley right now, one of the
those are nice.
Not like my knockoff Hydro Flask one, but I might. It has to be a nice water.
You can run it through a sanitization process or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It is a little bit weird. It's very intimate to drink from somebody's water bottle.
Nalgene's no, because they get kind of weird fuzzy. Have you ever they kind of get gross after?
Yeah.
Metal, yes. Plastic, no.
Okay, that's fair. That's a good place to draw the line, probably. Well, hey, this episode is not about water bottles. It is about books.
And authors that write books, like Kiersten White, who we're interviewing today.
That's right.
Kiersten White is a New York Times best-selling and Bram Stoker award-winning, critically acclaimed author of many books for readers of all ages.
Her books have been published in over 20 territories, and her novel Hide is currently in development with Universal Television and Peacock. So we're really excited. She's super fun to talk to. And
we're talking about Mr. Magic, a 2023 novel. So yeah, let's go ahead and
let's just jump into it.
Let's jump into it. Kiersten White, everybody.
We're happy to have you here today, Kiersten White, author of Mr. Magic and Hide, and all the other ones that we listed in our introduction.
Yeah, you write a lot of books. I'm impressed.
I stopped recently in an independent bookstore on a road trip and I was like, hey, do you have any of my books? I'd love to sign them. And she looked and she's like, you're in every section. And I was like, yeah.
So prolific.
Yes.
So we're here to talk about Mr. Magic today. And I thought if it'd be cool if you could tell us a bit about the book and the story and everything.
Yeah. So the premise of Mr. Magic is that Val, the main character, has been living and working on a ranch in Idaho since she was 8 years old. And the day of her father's funeral, 3 men show up out of the blue and claim that they were all on a children's show together. They were actors on a children's show 30 years before. I'm bad with numbers. 30 years before. And there's been renewed interest in the show. It ended in tragedy, but people really still love it. And she's invited to come to a reunion in the desert in the middle of nowhere in Utah and record a podcast.
That's not creepy at all.
It's not creepy at all. You should just always do them over Zoom, not in person. So as Val goes, she discovers more and more about this whole section of her childhood that's completely lost to memory. And they all begin to realize that the show is not what they remembered and was maybe more than a show, and it wants them back.
Yeah. It kind of just goes off on this whole wild ride. And yeah, we all really, really liked it.
Yeah.
So and we haven't ever done any horror before. So this was a fun I don't think we've ever done horror on the podcast.
Yeah,
have
I think
we?
this is our first. You're our first horror author, so congratulations. Yeah.
I'm very
Yeah.
honored. And also I feel like Mr. Magic specifically, if you're not a big horror reader, if your horror tolerance is very low, this is a good one to start with.
Oh, it totally is.
I agree
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
that assessment.
Yeah.
One of our team members listened to the book and said that it was like especially during the interview portions, it was just like super creepy because I felt like because I was reading it, I didn't get it. You know, I got to make up what the voice sounded like in my head. But I agree. I think it's horror, but it's like psychological. It's not like a slasher or any. There's not gory stuff.
No, I recently, I won't like say the name of the book, but there was like a horror book I was listening to on an audiobook and I had to turn it off because of the body horror element.
Ooh. Yeah.
Like yeah.
And like as a writer who writes horror, I totally get that, and I would never want somebody to read something past the level that they're comfortable with. But that's the beauty of horror. It is such a broad genre, right? You got everything from like the most hardcore, gory, upsetting things ever to things more on the Mr. Magic scale, where it's more, you know, it's creepy, it's eerie. There are some upsetting things, but like, you know, we're not leaning into body horror. We're not, you know, slaughtering tons of people, so unlike in Hyde. And so yeah, like that's
fine.
I do like, I will say, without spoiling too much, I hope this probably spoils it, but your books I like because a good chunk of the ensemble and the stories make it to the end, which I do not like when, I spent so long meeting all these characters and now everyone but one person's dead. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
But we are going to spoil a lot of the books.
Yeah.
At least Mr. Magic, we're going to get into it.
Yeah, this is going to be a very spoilery chat, which actually I'm excited about because I don't usually get to go very in depth on my books because I don't want there to be spoilers at like my events and everything because I recognize that not everyone has read them yet. So I'm really, really excited to get into it.
Well, because we were very like, it just gave us so much to talk about. So for instance, this is, we invited you for this particular episode because we wanted to focus on books that are lost or books about something lost or found. And your book, actually, both Mr. Magic and Hyde cover both of those things. You know, Val loses her memories. The kids kind of find what really happened on the TV show. And they had to kind of give up that memory that they had, that where they remembered it being so nice and wonderful and the happiest time of their lives, in order to really find out the truth. And so our question to you is it worth it? Like, is it worth it to give up so much to figure out the truth like your characters did?
Yeah, which is such a big question, right?
I know. A lot of these questions are loaded.
Yes, which I love. I love getting into it. And for me, the answer is yes. Because for me, if something feels happy but actually has a very sort of sinister, destructive core, if you can't acknowledge that core and you can't process that, then it's gonna haunt you, right? And also I leaned really a lot into the concept of toxic nostalgia, which is when we look back on things and we say things were so much better then. And maybe they were, but maybe they were just easier or simpler and not necessarily better. And also I think when you look back through that lens of I was happier then, you shut out everything that contradicts that narrative. And you see that a lot. I'm a millennial. You see that a lot in millennial culture when we talk about the properties that we had when we were children, and we make them bigger than they actually were. My favorite example of this is Ghostbusters. So Ghostbusters was an extended Saturday Night Live skit, right? Like the movie is fun. I love the original movie, but it is not a great movie, right? It's not.
No, yeah.
We're gonna get some hate on this podcast, but go ahead.
Yes. Okay. Again, I love the original Ghostbusters. Fantastic, phenomenal cast. Everyone's at the top of their game, but it is a deeply silly movie. it is, you know, it is a movie length Saturday Night Live sketch, and that's the way it works, right?
Yeah.
But because we all saw it when we were children, it has like an outsized place in our hearts. And so I think it's so fascinating looking at the reaction to the Melissa McCarthy reboot, which was very much in the spirit of the original, where it was just like gag after gag after gag, versus the more recent reboot, which is like, this is a story about the importance of family. And you're like,
oh no, yeah.
but
I'm actually like a big Ghostbusters fan, but not to where I'm like sending like the cast of the the Melissa McCarthy one hate mail or anything. But like I don't like the new ones because it's like this isn't what Ghostbusters was at all. Like they like basically like Abrams and made like which is like it's all about they turn it into like Stranger Things or whatever. That's like I feel like, and it's like this isn't Ghostbusters.
Wasn't the kid from Stranger Things too?
Yeah, the kid from Stranger Things is into it.
And like and it was so fascinating to me seeing the reaction to the Melissa McCarthy one versus the newer one, because people had so much nostalgia, but it wasn't rooted in what the movie actually was. It was rooted in how the movie made them feel. And how the movie made them feel can't be recaptured because you're not a child anymore, right? It's like how people hate whatever the newest Star Wars is because it doesn't feel like the Star Wars that they imprinted on as a child or a preteen, right? We think we want the same thing over and over again, but what we actually want is to feel the way we felt when we were watching that for the first time, and we never can again.
I'm like also a big Simpsons fan, and like Disney has like Disneyfied The Simpsons, and The Simpsons is good again, but I'm like, yeah, The Simpsons is good again, but it's because it's designed that way by a company that's vested interest is making this rekindle the nostalgia, and it doesn't feel the same to me. But that you're totally right. Sorry, I had to go off.
No, and that to me is an issue when you can't engage honestly with things from your past because you're only engaging with the feelings that you had. And for me, I grew up in a very specific community with very, very rigid values. And there's a lot about it that's very idyllic, right? Like it looks like it's all about families and very nurturing and very wholesome. But there's so much in it that's deeply, deeply destructive. And until I could engage honestly with those parts of it, it was still doing damage, right? Because if all I was doing was acknowledging the good parts of it, the parts of it that on the surface are very wholesome and very nurturing and warm and loving, then I couldn't engage with the parts of it that weren't, and therefore I couldn't engage with the parts of myself that didn't fit into their narrative. So it's a very sort of fractured way of living to me. So for me, even if it means giving up a lot of the sense of those memories, I think that it's worth it. I think it's worth it to find the truth at the core, because then you can really decide, like, what if this has value? What if this is damaging? And what if it is just stuff that I don't need to carry with me anymore?
And way to circle it back around to the question. But yeah, absolutely. I think I tend to agree with you that it's, you know, sometimes. So I thought it was funny because it's like ignorance is bliss, right? Which is the name of the town.
Literally the name of the town. Yes.
So yeah.
I guess like I guess one of the creepier elements is like how like this book deals with like childhood trauma, and like the children's childhood reflects an adult life, which goes into your nostalgia comments. And like it's weird how like as kids, like our memory is way better than it is as adults. And it's like in the book she knows all these rhymes for like the main character knows all these rhymes, and like, but she doesn't know where she got them from until she like uncovers and things. And like what, like, so like, I guess the question would be like, do childhood experiences have a bigger impact on our memories and experience as adults?
I think they do. And I think a lot of it is because we don't necessarily have a source for that, right? I will admit straight up, memory comes up a lot in my books because I have a really bad memory. It's everything from inconvenient to deeply upsetting. And so I think things like songs, right? Like my spouse and I grew up in the same time period, and we will still sing like commercial jingles to each other. Like, why do I know a cereal song from a commercial when I was 5 years old, but ask me what happened last week and I'm like, not sure. And I think those things stick deep and they impact us in ways that we don't realize, especially the ones with like moral lessons attached, right? So when you're a kid and you learn this, so there's a song that I was taught as a child in my religion, and I don't know if it's copyrighted. I'm not going to sing it, but it basically says, if you're sad and you have a frown, turn it upside down, and that's going to be better for everyone. So basically, this song is saying being sad is negative and bad, and you shouldn't do that. You should just decide to smile instead. And like, I get that it's this cute song, but it's not a great message to teach children, right? That some feelings are bad and not valid, and you should always replace those with this other feeling. Like sometimes you need to feel sad, and sometimes children need to feel sad, and they need to know that it's okay to have those big feelings and to feel sad. But when you get those messages repeatedly, like when I was a teenager, I was really depressed. I struggled very badly with depression. But I felt shame and guilt for being depressed because I wasn't supposed to be sad, and I didn't have a reason to be sad. Like I felt like I needed to have an excuse or like a cause for being sad, and because I didn't, it all just compounded into this weird shame where I didn't tell anyone that I was struggling or what I was feeling. I felt like I had to hide it because I wasn't supposed to be sad. I wasn't allowed to be sad. It's bad. It's a negative thing to be sad. And I think things like that, messages like that, that we don't realize we're internalizing so much. But as a child, you know, you're just this sponge and you're pulling in everything. And if you're never given permission to reject messages that are coming from authority figures, then you never do. And those things stay. So yeah, I definitely think that the things that we experience and the things that we're taught as children have an outsized impact later in life, which again comes back to being willing to look at hard things and being willing to confront the truth, because that's when we can really identify and be like, oh, you know, this cute song I was taught as a child is actually not great.
But I feel like that is a message that a lot of us kind of got, right? Like, don't repress all the bad stuff, only feel the good stuff, and like definitely qualifying all of our feelings in that way. And so I know we're going to talk about Mr. Rogers in a little bit, because there's another question I want to ask you about, but I feel like he was the antithesis to that, right? Because he was like, you can feel your feelings. It's okay to be sad, which is another thing that us millennials, I'm tying you into that. That we feel very deeply about, right? Mr. Rogers was our friend, our neighbor. And so I think, okay, I'm just going to skip ahead, because I think that it's really a great time to ask this question. And it's about parasocial relationships, which we, in your book, you know, the kids are in the circle of friends, and Mr. Magic is the guy that comes in and helps redirect them and all of their feelings, and helps them to not be too much, wild stuff. Which I'm not even doing a very good job of describing. You should read the book if you haven't already. But with these parasocial relationships, it's like all of these people that also felt that they were their friends, and Mr. Magic was the one who was helping them learn how to be a good person. And so it made me think of Mr. Rogers. It made me think of Sesame Street. And while those are more positive and Mr. Magic is very controlling, do you think, like, we all felt like they were our friends, the people on Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers? Is that an ethical, I don't know, is an ethical dilemma, right? Because is that okay to promote that to children, or does it just turn into propaganda?
I thought about Barney a lot reading.
Oh,
and the
idea actually started with Barney.
Okay, not Mr. Rogers.
Actual question, but yeah, Barney was the start of the idea, but not how you're thinking. My spouse was in the kitchen and said, wouldn't it be funny if you had a story where the kids who were on the cast of Barney reunited as adults and realized the whole thing was real? And I was like, yeah, because one of them reaches out to the others and they all cut her out of their lives because she was so paranoid. But she says, he's back. And they're ignoring her. But then her body is found with bite marks that could only have been delivered by a Cretaceous period dinosaur. And they all have to realize that Barney's back and he's not their friend anymore. And my spouse was like, why do you always make everything creepy?
Barney's back and he's mad.
Exactly. Yes. And so then I was like, okay, but what if you did have a cast of a children's show? And what if, and then, and that's where the idea came from. But for me, I think that, obviously kids do need lessons, right? We teach kids how to navigate the world, how to engage with the world. And you can do that in a very open way, like with Mr. Rogers, where the authority figures are kind and gentle and loving and accepting. And I think another really important thing about Mr. Rogers is Mr. Rogers was a deeply religious man, but he didn't impose structures of religious belief onto his show. All he brought from that was compassion and love. And that's what he was putting out into the world, which I really, really admire and respect. And I think, people are like, it's creepy, Mr. Rogers. I'm like, yes, but let's establish Mr. Rogers was not creepy. He was wonderful. And I think Sesame Street also is a really, really responsible program that acknowledges and respects kids' experiences. And I think if you look at the genesis of that show and the kids that it was designed for, I think it comes from a really, really thoughtful, careful place. Whereas if you look at other types of shows, particularly from the 80s and 90s, it very much was not that way, right? Like these were not careful shows. These were not respectful of children's experiences or feelings. It was just, let's sell some merchandise. And so for me, it's not so much a reflection of those types of parasocial relationships as it is the types of programming that literally want to program children, right? The ones that say there's only one way to be a good child. These are the parameters in which you can exist and be good and be approved of, and everything outside of it is bad. Like I remember there was an episode of Punky Brewster and her cousin comes and her cousin is fat, and that's bad. And so it's a whole episode about Punky trying to help her cousin lose weight. And like, that stuff sticks, right? Like we don't forget when we saw that as a child, and that being fat was equated with moral failures, right? That it needs to be fixed. And there's a moral value and a moral judgment associated with that. And those types of things, I think, are the dangerous things. And kids react to things and they relate to things, and they engage with things on a more intense level, I think, which is why I'm so grateful that there are a lot of programs out. Like I look at Steven Universe. Steven Universe has a song about trauma and about how when you have an experience that makes you feel shame, you want to look away from it. The instinct is to look away and to not engage with it. And it has a whole song about how you need to look at it, you need to accept it, and then you need to let it go. And it's about processing trauma. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like my kids are watching and they're like, this is a great show. I'm like, this is an amazing show.
I keep hearing people that watch Bluey. That's like how they're.
Yeah. And Bluey also is a very thoughtful one. And, I also write for children. I have a middle grade series, and I was very, very, very thoughtful about who my heroes were in this series, which kids got to be the heroes, and what their traits were, and how those traits were depicted, and how they were engaged with narratively. Because I take it very seriously. I view it as a huge responsibility. And I just think that there was a lot of material, particularly in the 80s and 90s and beyond, that was deeply irresponsible, right? Not necessarily sinister, but just really wildly irresponsible. Go ahead.
Oh, speaking of Punky Brewster, me and my brother both joke about how we have the "don't hide in a refrigerator" burned into our
every
heads.
Every kid knows.
So
not hide in a fridge. You will die.
I wasn't really allowed to watch a lot of television.
Okay, there's an episode of Punky Brewster where they're playing a hide and go seek, and one of the kids hides in an old refrigerator and suffocates. and like she makes
I
it.
must have the residual trauma from that because I feel like I have that. I don't remember that episode though.
Which this all gets into the next couple of questions about how we have those core memories as kids and how like nostalgia and the internet like affects it. Like I really like the epistolary elements
Oh yeah.
of Mr. Magic and it all taking place in message boards because I'm like a huge Creepypasta fan.
Yes.
And there was like that one that's similar to Mr. Magic of Candle Cove or whatever. And like but the Punky Brewster thing is always like interesting because it's like I can't tell you a lot about Punky Brewster at all because I was like very young when it was on, but I know a girl almost suffocated to death in a refrigerator.
Yes.
And like but I guess like my question, so like in the book we kind of see like the fandom of Mr. Magic exists in the form of message boards, and then there's like creepypastas and everything, and there's just kind of like which there's also these whole lost episode creepypastas where they like people will like, did you remember this episode of SpongeBob or this episode of Punky Brewster? Like a good creepypasta would be like writing the episode where the girl died in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
But like, why do you feel like these like memories of forgotten TV shows that are so ripe for horror, like especially like with Mr. Magic and things? Like, is it just because of her childhood memories or like?
Yeah, I think part of it is childhood memory. And also, I think part of it is we have lost inaccessibility, right? Like for a long period of time, if you remembered some weird show that you saw part of at 3 a.m. in the morning on TBS, you're never getting that back. You're never going to be able to find it. You're going to describe it to other people and it's going to sound like you're insane, right? Like I use the peanut butter solution as an example. Did either of you see the peanut butter solution?
I don't think so.
People have asked me if I've seen the peanut butter solution. Yeah.
Because it's one of those movies where it's like, did I really see that? I mean, there are kids who are losing their hair. There's a magic guy who gives them a solution to make their hair grow, but it makes their hair grow too much. And then he kidnaps them and uses their hair to make magical paintbrushes. And it's just the weirdest plot line ever. And for a really long time, it was sort of this like, was that movie real? Did I hallucinate that once when I was homesick from school? Like, but now I think it's in the Criterion collection or something. Like, you can go online. And yes, you can go online. You can go on Wikipedia. There's a description of the plot. Like, you know that it was real. But for a long time, you didn't have that. You just had these bits and pieces of media that you had seen or experienced, and you have no way of checking that it was real or checking that what you remember happened actually happened. Because that's another thing, right? Like our memories change. They're not reliable. And so what I really wanted to lean into with Mr. Magic and with the sort of the epistolary interstitials was this sense of, this is the one you can't have. This is the one that had such an impact on so many children. They all have a really strong emotional connection to it. Those were their friends. Some of them might have seen the last episode and seen what actually happened, which was very traumatic, but they've never been able to confirm it, right? They've never been able to see that it happened. They've never been able to like get any actual information about it because Mr. Magic is just gone. There's no video. You can't find clips of it online. No one knows who wrote it. No one knows who the production company was. So all anyone has of this show is memories and feelings, the feelings that they had when they watched it. So it was really fun kind of playing with that sense of that combination of, we now have the internet where we can access so many people and so many experiences and so many memories and also evidence, but I take the evidence part of that away. It's fun that you mentioned creepypasta because I actually was not familiar with creepypasta. All I knew was that it was a thing that existed. So I actually make a spooky spaghetti joke in the book.
Noticed that.
But I have since, because there's an older person who's like, you guys have your spooky spaghetti or whatever, let us have Mr. Magic. But it's been fun since when I saw so many reviews mentioning specifically Candle Cove. I've looked into it and I've seen everything, and it's very good and very fun. There's a movie coming out from A24.
I saw the TV glow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it has a very sort of similar concept, right? That there was this weird show that these kids were really into. And then later when they're older and they're struggling, they realize maybe elements of the show were real. I don't know that much about. I just have seen the trailer, and it was funny because I looked on the comments of the trailer, and a lot of them were like, "This is just like Candle Cove," and a lot of them were like, "Is this the Mr. Magic adaptation?" And I was like, "No." But I'm excited to see it because I think it's a really cool concept. And I do think that we have such strong, going back to the parasocial relationships, we have such strong relationships with the media that we view and experience as a child that it's so ripe for horror, really.
I totally have one of these weird memories of being up in like late 80s watching I remember it creeped me out because it was a solid black screen with like neon puppets dancing around and stuff. And like there's tons of message boards devoted to the show, and people will post videos, and it's never like that wasn't it. That wasn't it. So
Yeah.
like this whole thing, this whole like cultural phenomenon has always like I've been drawn to it. And I think it's like, and I don't think anyone's like taking from anyone else, because I think it's a cultural phenomenon, and we're just gonna. And I will say real quick, my brother, I went to the movies, and the trailer for I saw the TV Glow show came on, and my brother was like, "Is this the Ring for Zoomers?"
Yeah, kind of. It's also an interesting looking at generational, right? Like I'm 40, I have a child who's 20, and they have grown up in an era where everything is accessible, right? Nothing's ever lost, except things like the Willow series on Disney Plus. They immediately take down, and you can never watch it again. I'm still bitter. But so that accessibility and that way to like to confirm your memories, but also they are lacking the experiences that we have, where there just wasn't as much media when we were growing up. And so there were those shows that everyone watched them, and that doesn't exist as much anymore. So Mr. Magic definitely has to hit that sweet spot of, this is the generation where every child would have been watching the same show, just because there weren't that many shows on. But yeah, it is interesting generationally how media has changed, how the way that we engage with media has changed. It's all, I don't know, it's fascinating. I find it all super fascinating, which is the spirit, when you read Mr. Magic, I'm into that kind of thing.
That's I like the nostalgia elements, and I like that you're critical of it, and it's not just like Star Wars was cool.
Yeah, which it was. But yeah, like I think I look at the shows that I watch, and there's one of my favorite things that I have in there is a woman who posts her proposed like thesis that got rejected.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's breaking down shows, and those were all shows that I loved, that I was super into, that looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, that kind of sucked. Like the way, and it's almost always the way that they the role of women or the role of girls in the show, right? Everybody else gets to be a person, and the girl is the girl. So yeah, it was really fun getting to engage with stuff like that over the course of the novel.
And I'm so we kind of talk about fandom, and you've written some media tie-in books. You've worked on Buffy books and Star Wars, which like from a different point of view. So like you have experiences with these huge like fandom, like these like that have cult followings. Like did any of your experiences with, I hope all your like working in those like has been good for you. Like I hope that you've not had any like one getting mad at you because you like ruined the probe droid in Empire Strikes Back or something.
Well, I did write a novel about teenage Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I fortunately it came out right before I left the country for 3 weeks and turned off the internet, so that was a good choice on my part.
You
yeah,
yeah. I was just gonna say they retcon because of the Disney buy or whatever. I was reading the synopsis. I was like, I thought I read that as a kid, but it was like retcon from the old like canon or whatever. But
yeah, because there were Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon novels that are no longer canon, which is also an interesting. That's a whole other can of worms. But it is interesting stepping into a fandom space as a creator. You'll always see the reviews that are like, this is fan fiction. I'm like, it's not, it's officially licensed and I got paid. And I had one experience, yeah, right. I'm like, it's literally not fan fiction. I had one experience when I was on tour for the Buffy books where I had a woman get really upset with me in the Q&A portion. She was upset not about the book itself, but she was upset because she asked about the research that I did. And then I talked about, rewatching the whole series, reading all the graphic novels, reading all of the like tie-in, like the monsters encyclopedia and all those things. And she was upset that I hadn't used Buffy Academia, which, because there's a lot of Buffy Academia. And I was like, well, I didn't want to engage with outside theories and ideas about the show because I'm writing as part of the show, right? Like I'm writing as part of the universe. And that really upset her. And she kept getting more and more upset. And finally I just had to say, I'm a professional writer. They hired me to write a new corner of the Buffyverse because I'm a professional writer and I'm good at what I do. Next question. And that's really kind of how I've had to, it ended up being fine. I saw her again the next year when I was on tour for the sequel, and she was great. She was lovely. It was just, and that's the thing is, when you are writing in those spaces, you realize these stories and these worlds mean so much to people. They mean so much to people. And I know that fandom can get a bad rap and that people will make fun of how much it means to people, but I respect it. Like I respect the passion and the intensity that people have for these properties. I don't respect when it turns into violent rhetoric or attacking people. I think that's absurd. But I try as a creator to be very, very respectful. And when I'm writing for an existing universe, I try not so much to recreate the characters, but to recreate the feeling, right? Because for me, I love Buffy. I love, the characters. I love the writing. I love all those things. But when I was writing a new Slayer in the Buffyverse, I wanted to capture the way that I felt when I watched Buffy. And so that was really what I leaned into. And people responded really, really well. Buffy fans are lovely, unless you say negative things about Spike. Don't say negative things about Spike. I'm not saying anything negative about Spike. Spike is great. Nothing negative here. I learned that lesson. But it also changes the way that you engage when you're a creator in those universes, right? Like I will never post an opinion online or say an opinion out loud in a recorded setting that is anything other than I love Star Wars and I love the way that I feel when I watch it. I love Buffy and I love the way that I feel when I watch it. Like that's it. Those are the only opinions. That is, I'm not going to say anything controversial. I'm not going to say anything negative. In part because, again, I don't want to engage with people who would be angry about that, but also because I want to be respectful of the meaning that those properties hold in people's lives. And like, I imagine, like, let's say somebody read Padawan and they loved my version of Obi-Wan Kenobi and it meant a ton to them. And they go online and they see me saying something negative about something else in the Star Wars universe that means a lot to them. Like that's hurtful, right? And I don't ever want to, be that person. I want fans who love the properties that I work in to either love the things that I do or be able to ignore them. Please just, if you don't like it, just ignore it.
Step one of conflict resolution. Use I statements, right?
Yeah.
It's like you can't argue with how I feel.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you how I feel. How you feel is different. So I think that's a very respectful way to like navigate all of that, because people do get really, really intense about it. I don't know that there's anything that I'm so intense about that I would get angry. Pride and Prejudice, even like there's been so many Pride and Prejudice like read adaptations.
And if you don't like that adaptation, you just don't engage with it. You let it go.
I even liked the one with zombies. I thought it was fun.
Our listeners are pretty cool. I have provoked them a couple of times because it's completely okay to call them Frankenstein, is what I say.
Oh,
the litter. I'm saying.
I also wrote a Frankenstein retelling.
I saw that. Yeah, this is a You don't have to call it. We don't call it Ford's automobile. We call it a Ford. Okay. This is a Frankenstein-free podcast. That's the stand. We're also government sponsor. It's like this is through our job with the city we work for, and it's just kind of like we're kind of tied to that, but. They haven't. The mayor hasn't called me in for taking the Frankenstein stance yet, so
it's good.
Yeah, but it is interesting, and it's interesting how passionate people get. I find it fascinating. I like it. I mean, the fact that people are passionate about things that they love. It's part of why I have a career. But yeah, it was fun getting to write some of that. And like you see some of the fights on message boards, people getting mad about anyone implying there was negative things about the show or outright stating that there were negative things about the show, which again, as somebody who has written in the Buffyverse, there are very negative things about that show. There were very bad things that happened on set. And I think you have to be able to engage with that, right? You have to be able to say, yes, the creator of the show had some really negative, destructive behaviors that were very harmful to people, but the show was more than just him. It was the actors, it was the writers, it was the incredible like costume designer and all of those things. And so like I feel okay about still being a fan of Buffy, but if somebody were to say I don't engage with Buffy content because of what happened, I also respect that. And I think I think we could all just be like, yes, I can respect your experiences and your opinions. We'd be better off. But yeah.
Truth bombs.
I'm listening to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is just a funny coincidence, but I'm listening to the MCU like huge oral history of it that came out like in November, and they are talking about it, the Buffy guy right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like about like all this stuff that was like wow, that's a funny coincidence.
Yeah.
Like,
And that's part of Mr. Magic, right? Is saying like I loved Buffy. It was a hugely impactful storytelling for me, but as an adult looking back at it, I can recognize that there are problematic things within the characters and the scripts and the storylines. I can recognize that there are problematic things with the creator of the show, and I think it's important to recognize those things and to acknowledge them. I still allow myself to love the show, but again, yeah, like I understand if people want to remove it from their fandoms, like that's cool too.
Respect. Just respect.
Yeah.
It's like, don't worry yourself about other people's like
is there
stuff.
Yeah. Is there any fandoms you would want? Like, are there any properties that you want to like would love to work for? Like, out of all of them, I mean, like you've done. Like you're going in the public domain, working with like Dracula and Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to tackle that you just haven't had a chance to yet, or anything like that?
Do you know when I tried so hard to get a Pokemon novel?
Oh,
Really?
So hard. When Detective Pikachu came out, I'm like, they're opening up the world. And so I had a contact at Scholastic, which publishes Pokemon novels. And I was like, I want to write an original YA Pokemon novel. And she was like, maybe write me a pitch. So I wrote the pitch. I was super excited about it. She took it up the chain. Scholastic was like, this looks great. They took it to the Pokemon company, and the Pokemon company was like, no. If she wants to write a novel that uses characters and storylines from one of the animated series, she can, but we're not doing original content. And actually, like, I really respect that. I really respect a company that's like, we as much as many adults love Pokemon, like it is a children's property, and they are very, very, very protective of everything related to it. And in this world where you see a lot of properties just like, where can we make a buck? Pokemon's like, nope. And I respect that. So that was a bummer, but also like, props to Pokemon. They have a lot of integrity.
we don't do that here.
We don't
do that here at Pokemon.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So Pokemon was off the table, which is fine. But yeah, I have a Dracula spinoff coming out this fall called Lucy Undying. I have the Dark Sentinels of Frankenstein. I have Star Wars. I have Buffy. I don't know. There's a lot of things that I love enough that I feel like I could do a really cool. I could work in that universe really cool. There are some comics and graphic novel properties that I love that I think would make really cool novels if they were ever interested. But I think that's also what makes me good about adaptation is, or working within existing universes, is I'm not an encyclopedic fan, right? Like my brain is all vibes, no details. So I'm not gonna get caught up into the like, this thing happened in this version of this, and because of that you have to include it. Like, I'm just not detail oriented enough for that. So I think it actually helps me when it comes to working within existing universes, because I'm not so married to everything that has ever happened, that I can be a little bit more flexible in engaging with the story and the way that it's told. But yeah, that being said, I do like working in licensed properties. I think it's a really interesting challenge because it's like, how can I make a story that fits within this existing storytelling that makes sense, that you've never heard that story before, but also feels like that story was always there, you just didn't know about it yet, which is a really, really interesting creative challenge, and it's one that I really enjoy. So if you are a licensed property out there and you're like, hey, let's work with Kiersten, you probably can't afford me.
What about like a Jane Austen fantasy? That could be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Or like
Yeah,
creepypasta mixed with Jane Austen. I don't know.
or Jane Austen. I actually do have my next adult that I'm just in the very, very early stages of, is definitely sort of like a historical, like very atmospheric romance, but with also horror elements. So that's always fun. Historical is the hardest to write by far, though. Like, one my biggest selling series is historical fiction, verging on fantasy, because I take actual historical events and I change characters, and I decompress time. But it's so hard to write, and it requires, I mean, I did thousands of pages of research for that series and like months and months of research. So people always like, when are you going to write historical again? And I'm like, it's like childbirth. You only do it again when you've forgotten how much it hurt. And I have not forgotten how much writing historical fiction hurt. So yeah, that's why I haven't touched Jane Austen, because I don't want to do that level of research right now.
That's fair. Super fair.
I got a pitch. So
Okay.
this is the year Mickey Mouse went into the public domain. So like, but Steamboat Willie, right? So
Yes,
it's
you've seen there
Steamboat
are already
Willie.
horror movies coming out with.
But
Steamboat
everyone's
Willie.
doing horror though, right? Like, that's where everyone's mind's going. Edwardian romance about Steamboat William and Men of Your
Steamboat
Mouth.
William, yes, Steamboat William.
And what was the villain's name?
Max, I think. I don't remember.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's not a big deal. You know what? Let's take a break.
Yeah.
Let's take a break.
'Cause we're talking about-
We could go off on this
On that
whole
note.
tangent forever. We'll take a break, and then when we come back, we will keep going because we've still got a lot more to cover.
Yeah.
Did you know that the Wichita Public Library offers a large selection of digital magazines for free? They are easy to access and are now available to you on the Libby app. You can download Libby from your phone or tablet's app store, sign in with your Wichita Public Library card, and start browsing immediately. Magazines can be found under the Guide section on Libby and include popular magazine titles about news and politics, cooking, celebrity news, healthy living, and more. For additional information on Libby, please visit wichita.overdrive.com.
And we're back with Kiersten White, author of Mr. Magic. We're having a great time talking about all the things. Daniel, I think you've got a question.
Oh yeah. So if we kind of take a look like in Mr. Magic about like the bigger picture at play, and it's these adults that are kind of like basically like, without giving away, there's a lot of
You can give it away. I think we just said we were going to have spoilers, so give it away.
There's an authoritarian element to the town of Bliss and how they kind of control everything. And so like, I guess like this has every, like, I feel like every that you kind of bring it up with like these shows that were designed to sell things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And like, I guess like my question is like, why is it so dangerous for like people that have vested interests, especially like in children's television or something, like, or just with like, yeah. So why is it dangerous for oppressive groups to control narratives, as shown in your book, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, and that's a big question, but it's an important question. And for me, what it stemmed from was, as I mentioned, I grew up in a very insular, very controlling community that dictated, they didn't just want to dictate what you did, they wanted to dictate what you felt and how you thought. And they were also really big on gender roles and very rigid gender roles. And so the messaging that I got was very different than the messaging that my spouse got. Like I would get like Sunday school lessons on keeping a clean house, and how if you're not clean, if you're not cleaning a lot, if you don't know how to clean, you're gonna make God sad.
And we know what we do with those feelings of sadness, right? We put them away.
Yes. And my spouse, who is male, did not get any of those lessons. He got to go on scout trips and learn how to build fires. So it's I think that the issue for me, particularly with Bliss, that I tried to capture is there's a joke that the mayor makes where he said, we're very excited to get back to programming quality children.
Oh
So it's
yeah,
not
caught that.
children's programming,
Yeah.
it's programming quality children. And it goes back to this idea that you see a lot where people view children as property, right? Like as a parent, your children are not individuals, they're not people in their own rights. They belong to you, and it is your right to create them and to create the way that they think and to control the way that they're going to be as adults, right? And I mean, so many creepy, weird things.
Yeah, very dangerous way of thinking.
Very dangerous way of thinking and a very destructive way of thinking, right? Because if you are actually a parent and you have children, you realize they are who they are when they're born. They just get more capable of expressing it and of moving into themselves. And if you are at every stage telling them, no, this is how you feel, this is how you think, this is the only way for you to be a person and to be a good person, like, it's so damaging and it's so sad, and it's very, very destructive, and I think it's a very destructive mentality. And it turns into things you see, like the book banning that's sweeping the nation. It's parents saying, I don't want my kid to be exposed to other points of view or things that might expand their world, and therefore no other kid should either. So then it turns into not just, I'm going to control what my kids think and feel and do. I also need to control what your kids think and feel and do. And then it just kind of expands out from there. And Bliss is sort of the personification of that idea, right? That their way of thinking, their way of moving through the world is the only correct way. And it is their moral responsibility, but also their right, their absolute right to push those ideas out onto children everywhere and to reshape every child they can in their own image. And yeah, so that's kind of what I was trying to capture with Bliss, with this town, and what they're doing with the show. What they hope to do again with the show is this idea that it's not enough that I view my own children as property, that it's my right to create my own vision and ideals in them, but also your children.
Yeah. So I'm just going to launch right into the next question because I feel like it's a good segue. You briefly mentioned also the kind of troubled teen industry, as it is known. One of your characters gets sent to after Mr. Magic ends, and he's still not the perfect child that they envision. They send him to, I believe, what would be considered a gay conversion camp. Is that? I mean,
yeah, this one was not specifically a gay conversion camp. Those are very different. This was a behavioral remodification camp, which was a very big industry. It still is a very big industry, but particularly in Utah, where I grew up, there were a lot of these because people who owned them and made money off of them had connections to state government. And so the state government let them do whatever they wanted and looked the other way. And so it's... I have a lot of feelings about that industry and the things that it's teaching children and showing children. It's basically like a lot of the times what happens is the parents, pay for this service. Men come into their teenagers' room in the middle of the night, kidnap them, handcuff them while the parents are watching. And so the message is, we are going to let this happen. We made this happen. And this is your fault. And until you can change and be what we want you to be, you can't come back. And this is different than, like, if you have a child who's struggling with addiction issues, this is not rehab. This is not, this is not intervening to save a child's life. This is telling a child, you are not what we want you to be, and we will allow you to be abused until you are. And so I have a lot of really big feelings about that industry. I think it's evil. I think the things that they do, and it's been interesting because there was a documentary that just came out about one of these groups, And I saw a woman talking online, and she said, it's hard for me because I went to one of those camps and I actually had a great experience. I feel like it saved my life. But as an adult, looking back at the things that happened, it worked for me because I was able to fit into the program. But I saw kids that it didn't work for, and how they were abused. And because it wasn't happening to me, I was okay. And I think that's important to acknowledge, right? That everybody's going to have a different experience with these types of things. But for me, having a character, Javi, who had gone through that was important because, it's all that same concept, right? That you are my child, but you are my possession. And if you are not behaving the way that I think that you should, I will break you until you do. And that's what those camps are for. Those camps are for breaking children until they give up and they agree to just be whatever their parents want them to be. And so, yeah, that was definitely one where you could have an entire book about that. And there are entire books about that. But I just, in my ways of exploring all the ways in which, we tell children that if they aren't what we expect them to be, they're wrong. That's one of the more extreme examples.
So do you think if Mr. Magic had been able to continue as it was, not in the way that we get at the end, do you think that's kind of the direction they were trying to head, the City of Bliss? The creepy mayor. Oh, he was creepy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Like, do you think that we were heading into a break the children to
Like Mr. Magic in his new form? Was that kind of like where
Oh,
it's going?
no,
Thank you
I
for
think
clarifying for me.
they view that as a failure, right? If you
Yeah.
get to that point, your teenager's already a failure. So what they were heading toward was they wanted to expand the show and because they got to get the kids when the kids are young, right? When
Right.
they're not. And that's another thing that I talk about in the book, this concept that innocence is somehow more valuable than experience, and that if you are an adult and you have had experiences and you've been through things, that you're somehow broken and wrong, and that it's more valuable to be a child with zero experience, that's somehow a better state of being, whereas they're just different states of being. There's not one that's inherently better than the other. And so for me, what the place wanted to do was restart that program so that they could really get in there with the kids and fix the kids before they ever had to, fix the kids before they ever had to intervene in ways like that.
Early intervention.
Yeah.
Early intervention, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the trauma, and in the afterward, you even say that this book was your means of helping process some of that trauma. So we were all just like, but why? Like, there were so many different ways you could have done that, and you chose a children's TV show to process that. And so I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about that. Like, why choose children's TV?
That's a great question. I was just, at the time, I was thinking a lot about, I had talked to someone who worked on a Disney Channel program with an actor who went on to be a very big actor and then an incredibly troubled actor. And he was talking about, he worked with this show when this adult was 11 or 12. And he said that was when I realized I didn't want to work in Hollywood anymore, because I looked at this child and the way that the adults around him were engaging with him and fawning over him. And it was such a weird, creepy dynamic because he was a kid, but they were making money off of him. And so they were very invested in continuing to make money off of him and doing whatever they needed to stay in his orbit and to keep him in the spotlight so that they could continue to make money off of him. And then, it came out years later that, of course, he was being abused by people on his team. He was being abused by his dad, like all of these terrible, terrible things, but nobody cared and nobody protected him because they were making money off of him. And so that's kind of why I took it. That's kind of why I went with the television angle. Just because that's where my head was. There existed a completely different version of Mr. Magic, the first version, which has a different plot line, different characters, different setting. And it was like, that one was about too many things. It was about child stardom. It was about parenthood. It was about childhood. It was about podcasts. It was about parasocial relationships, like all of these things. And then in the second version, I really kind of distilled it down to what I wanted it to be. Cut characters, combine characters, change the setting. Just to really kind of I go into every book with a question that I want to explore, an idea that I wanted to explore. And the problem with that first draft is there were too many, and I had to cut some of them and leave it down. So the children's program remained, just because for me, growing up in such a specific controlling religion, that's where they hit you the hardest, is in childhood, because they've got to get those messages in. And so having adults looking back at their childhood and being like, oh, all those things that we thought were good and healthy actually, have caused a lot of damage. Yeah, and then again, it's a horror novel, so I'm like, that would be creepy. Like the concept of a children's show where there's Mr. Magic in the background, but nobody actually remembers what he looks like, and some people think he was a puppet, and some people think he was CGI, and some people think he was a person. Like, I just liked that, I could lean into the like creepy factor and the uncertainty factor.
I would just want to say, on a personal level, I did read this. You wrote an article, I forgot which publication, about you leaving your church, and I just want to say that was a really well done piece. And
thank you.
It had a lot of heart and compassion, and like it wasn't like a completely scathing teardown or anything. You dealt with like how this huge part of your life and how you let go of it. I actually thought that was a really good piece of writing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And like, it's important to me. Like, I respect people's faith, and I respect the place that faith holds in people's lives. And I respect what people hold sacred. But at the same time, my experience, and my anger and my feelings, I also hold those sacred. And so I can hold respect for what people believe and the good that they're finding in organizations, particularly the organization that I left, at the same time that I can hold my experience as also valid, and the things that are wrong with it deserve to be talked about. So yeah, it's a fine line to walk, because I do still have a lot of friends and family members and loved ones that are in that organization and in that religion. But if I value their feelings and I respect them, then I expect that to go both ways.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a question about like the timeline of when you wrote Hyde and Mr. Magic. Like, which one did you write first, and then which one, like, because there's like, yeah, we weren't sure basically. We saw some different dates.
Well, because Hyde came out, and then Mr. Magic, and then the Hyde graphic novel,
okay.
right?
Yes.
Is that how that went?
Yeah. So Hyde was actually, so Hyde, the premise of Hyde is that 14 kind of aimless 20-somethings are invited to an international hide and seek competition set in an abandoned amusement park. And they have to, if they can make it to the end, they win $50,000.
And no spoilers on that one, because I haven't totally finished it, but I'm close to the end. So no spoilers.
Yeah. So Hyde was actually, it was an idea that I had in the works for several years. I read an article about the Nascondino International Hide and Seek competition that was set in an abandoned resort town in Italy. It was this resort town that they started building, then they ran out of money, and they held a hide and seek competition there. And I was like, oh, that sounds so murdery, but it wasn't. It had like tons of rules, and like, anyway, no one got murdered, which I guess is good. But so that idea I thought was really creepy. And then I was thinking, about patterns that we live over and over again, and particularly generational predation, where older generations say, I deserve what I have and what I think that I should have, and if the youngest generation has to pay the cost of it, I'm fine with that, particularly in America, particularly when it comes to gun violence. And so, as a mom, I have a lot of anger and a lot of despair about that. And that went into informing Hyde. I took a run at it, I think in like 2018. My agent didn't particularly like it, so I set it aside. And then in 2020, when you guys remember 2020? It was weird.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't. I just skipped right over it.
Right.
2019, then that's 2022. Yeah.
It's like 3 years long. Weird.
Yeah. So, we're home, and I was so stressed out. I couldn't get into a place where I could create new ideas, but I had a couple of things that I had wanted to have time to work on and hadn't had time to work on. And one of those was Hyde, and one of those was my middle grade series. And so we sent out Hyde, and my publisher, the incredible Del Rey, my editor is Trisha Narwani. She's brilliant. She loved it and she bought it, and it was a 2-book deal. So yeah, Hyde was first, and then I actually pitched her Lucy Undying next, and she was really in love with it. But then I got the idea for Mr. Magic, and I was like, I think this one needs to jump in line and go next. And she agreed. So yeah, so Hyde came out in 2022. what are years? And then Mr. Magic came out in 2023, and the Hyde graphic novel came out in fall of 2023 also, which was a super cool project. And the same team is doing a graphic novel for Mr. Magic. So
I was gonna ask.
Yes. Yes, yeah. And I know you guys had questions about the graphic novel for Hyde. It was a really, really cool process because, you know, we love story, we love multimedia. I'm not a super visual person. And so it was really, really cool. My adapter is Scott Peterson. He's phenomenal. He went through Hyde and he created the graphic novel script. And I gave editorial feedback on it. So like, you know, there was a moment where I was like, we need to linger on this beat a little bit longer. I think it's really important. You know, yeah, it's fine. We can lose that scene because if, you know, translating it from an entirely text version to a primarily visual version, you just tell the story in a different way, which was really, I love adaptation. I find adaptation really, really fascinating. So it's cool being part of that process. And then same on the art. The artists were Veronica Fish and Andy Fish. They're incredible. The way that they capture movement and it's just so dynamic. And it was really, really cool seeing the characters because again, I'm not a visual person. I never see my characters. And so actually getting to see them was really a, you know, bucket list, dream come true. They would thumbnail out the sections and send them to me and I would give editorial feedback. But most of my editorial feedback was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Because I really like, I respect visual artists so much because it's not something that I'm good at. And so it feels like magic to me, even though I know it's actually representative of years and years and years of practice and work and experience to make it feel like magic. So yeah, it was a really, really cool process. Definitely a bucket list item for me. And I'm so excited to be working with the same team again because they just are so phenomenal at taking something that was, you know, in my head and then turning it into something that everybody can look at. It's really cool.
I was listening to the audiobook for a bit and then I switched to the graphic novel and reread it and I was like, oh, it's the same thing. Like for like, cause I have like issues with like reading because of ADHD and stuff. So like I was really impressed with like the adaptation because I felt like I didn't lose anything or
it's a very it's a very faithful adaptation. And I love that you mentioned that you were listening to the audiobook and then you read the graphic novel. And I think sometimes people have these attitudes that one type of reading is superior to another. And we know that's not true, right? Like audiobooks are phenomenal. And the fact that they give people access to books where maybe if you struggle with dyslexia or ADHD, or you just drive a lot, like that you can experience books in a new way. And the same thing, graphic novels, particularly for children, I think they're the most incredible literacy bridge. And they build a different type of literacy, that visual literacy, because you have to engage with the story in multiple ways. And I actually feel as an adult, I've had to learn how to read graphic novels because it's a very different type of literacy. And I've really had to like teach myself how to understand and read graphic novels. Whereas kids, when they're exposed to them young, like that visual literacy is already there, which I think is so cool. And you know, yeah, I really love that. You know, I have these very high quality audiobooks that are produced by Penguin Random House Audio. Kelly Gilday is the director of my audiobooks and she's phenomenal. She always finds exactly the right people to work with. And then, yeah, the graphic novel, like it's just, as a storyteller and as a person who loves stories, I just nerd out about it because I'm like, yes, let's have all the formats. Let's find all the ways to tell this story. And Hyde is actually in development at Universal TV and Peacock with Sugar Witch Productions. Ingrid Escojeda is working on it. And who knows if it'll happen, but like, if it does, I hope they adapt it and I hope they take enormous liberties with it. And I hope they tell the best version for television that they can. Because I already told the best book version that I could. And my team already told the best graphic novel version that we could. And so I'm like, yeah, let's just tell all the versions.
Speaking of literary formats, this is actually a good lead on for my next question. I'm currently doing Dracula Daily. Yes. Which is like, if you don't know, Bram Stoker's Dracula is epistolary. And it's in the form of letters and it's in the form of like correspondences and journals. And it starts at a certain time, which I think it's someday in late April or May. It just started.
It just started, yeah.
And today's May 9th, which is when Mina writes to Lucy. And which goes into our next question. It's Lucy Westenra, who is our Westenra.
Yeah.
Westenra is a character from Bram Stoker's Dracula. And like I love the version in the movie, the Coppola version. Like she's like really interesting character. And in the book, it seems like that same character is there, and like you did a standalone novel about her and kind of like brought her like resurrected her literally. And so
Yes.
yeah, I just had a question if you want to talk about that, because I think that's really interesting, and she's a cool
Yeah.
character to do that with. So
Yeah, and going along with our talk of like engaging with stories, right? So I love the novel Dracula. I've always loved the novel Dracula, but the treatment of Lucy has always really bothered me, right? Because Mina's held up as this sort of like paragon of orderliness, almost like she's devoted to Jonathan. She has all of these useful skills, like she's useful. Whereas Lucy is just like flighty and beautiful and everyone loves her, but she just kind of is, that's it. She's flighty and beautiful and everybody loves her. And over the course of Dracula, her death is like so prolonged, so agonizing, and it takes out any she has no say, right? They don't tell her what's happening to her. They perform medical procedures on her without her consent or knowledge. And then when she's a vampire and she's no longer who they think that she is, they cut off her head because she shouldn't exist in a form that, is in their minds corrupted. And so that always really bothered me. That we have, these four paragons of Christian masculinity, and they are saving her, but they are deeply incompetent. They are so bad at it. And I just think she's such an interesting, fascinating character. And so I wanted her to have her own story. And also, spoiler alert, I have always read her as queer in the novel. She and Mina have a very intense relationship. They talk about kissing. And so I, as a person who had to spend a really good chunk of my life closeted, was like, who would she have been in this time period if she had those feelings that she had no words for? Like, it wasn't even that she knew they were off limits. It was that she didn't understand like why she was feeling that way or what she was, or, any of those things. And so, I use Dracula as a jumping off point, and I reimagine a narrative for Lucy in which she does become a vampire, but she doesn't die. And it was really fun to write because I have a lot of references to Dracula. There's a lot of in jokes. If you haven't read Dracula, it's okay. You will still understand it. But if you have read Dracula, you'll be like, oh, Kiersten has some really specific theories, and I do. And so it was fun too because I got to have several storylines. So we have Lucy's journals from when she was a teenager before she was turned into a vampire. We have Lucy telling her life story to a therapist. So yeah, I didn't do interview with a vampire. I did therapy with a vampire. So she's telling like her journey through the decades. And then we have a modern day storyline of Iris Goldeming, who's the Goldeming family heir, going to explore a house she's just inherited in England, which happened to be Lucy's house. And then also Dracula, who, spoiler, didn't die either, and he's stalking a new victim. So it was really fun. It is funny though, because talking about Mr. Magic and the sort of like documents and epistolary form, my initial version of Lucy was much heavier on epistolary form as an homage to Dracula.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if that's the way you took it.
Yeah. The original version was very, very much more epistolary. I had a lot of found documents from Iris is the heir to the Goldeming Life Foundation, which is Goldeming Life, which is an MLM, a multi-level marketing company. And those are inherently vampiric. So I was like, well, this is perfect. And so I had a lot of like the company documents and all of those things, which ended up getting cut because we really wanted to focus more on the love story at the heart of the book, because that was the whole reason I wrote it, right? Like I wanted Lucy to have a life. I wanted her to be able to have like a full love in the way that she deserved. And so yeah, it was a really, really fun book to write. A fascinating book to revise because most of my edits, like the story always stayed the same, but it was like huge structural edits, changing it every time. But yeah, it comes out September 10th. The cover is gorgeous. If you haven't looked at the cover, go online, look up Lucy Undying. The artist was Audrey Benjaminson, and it is just the most stunning, glorious Gothic paranormal romance cover ever. But yeah, I'm excited. It's very different than Mr. Magic, but if you like those themes of looking at the truth and fighting to figure out who you are and what you want. Like I said, I got a review once that said my horror is surprisingly heartwarming. And I hope that's true also in Lucy, because, you know, I care about these characters and I care about my readers, and that I think those themes of self-discovery and learning to love yourself too are always present in my horror, along with, you know, a lot of blood.
You can't have horror without blood. I mean,
Yeah.
although I don't think Mr. Magic doesn't have a whole lot of blood, does
Magic
it?
doesn't have any blood.
I'm actually, when I need a soft horror, like I like Grady Hendrix and he's toned it down from a lot of things, but like I read a Grady Hendrix, like he's got a dog in here. I don't know if I could.
Oh, yeah, no.
Because he's 50-50 on that. And so, but like if I ever need, like if something is too intense, I'll see what you have out the horror genre, because I'm like, she's not gonna like make me like,
What's your favorite genre to write in then? Horror?
Middle grade.
Middle grade. Oh, that's
Middle grade. Middle grade, because I can just be funny and absurd and playful. You can play with language a lot and do funny things with language. My Sinister Summer series is my middle grade series, and I play a lot. I do a lot of wordplay. And they're very funny. They're spooky, but mostly funny. And it's such a nice palate cleanser, particularly because here's the thing I struggle with the most in writing young adult and adult. I just cannot think of any more ways to describe the feeling of being attracted to someone. Like, like they were beautiful. I wanted to press our mouths together. Like, I don't know, guys, she's attractive. So it's really nice in middle grade. I didn't have to do that at all. But middle grade, I think, is really joyful to write also. It's what I started out wanting to write, but I think it's much more difficult to write than young adult and adult. And so it took me several years of writing other things to figure out how to write middle grade. But it's the hardest market to break into and to have consistent sales in. So, I mean, which is not to say that I don't love the other things that I write. I love everything that I write. Otherwise I wouldn't write it, because I have a really short attention span. But middle grade is the most joyful to write. Also, it's way shorter. You know what? It's a lot easier to write a 40,000 word book than a 150,000 word book. So, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to check out any of your middle grade stuff, but we'll make sure to include those in our accompanying
show notes.
Yeah. My brain stopped working.
But, yeah. Can you have any can you recommend 3 books you've enjoyed recently for
So that's what we're asking all of our guests
we're asking.
Recommend some books for our listeners.
Yes. Okay. And on the theme of Lost and Found, my first recommendation is Whale Fall by Daniel Kraus.
Okay.
It is about a young man whose dad had a terminal illness and decided to die by suicide by jumping off of a boat into the water. And so this young man, who was estranged from his father, decides to take it on himself to go into the ocean on a dive trip in a very dangerous area in Monterey to retrieve his father's bones to get back to his family. And in the course of doing this, in the most unlikely sequence of events that are still somehow completely scientifically accurate, he gets swallowed by a whale. And it is a survival story. It's, if you don't like body horror or gore, maybe don't do this one.
Okay.
It is intense, but it is also like the most beautifully emotionally cathartic thing ever. I don't know how Daniel did it, but he did, and it is a phenomenal read. So yeah, the bones are lost, and maybe the father-son bond is found. The next one is The September House by Orlando. I think the last name is Orlando. I'm sorry, I'm so bad with details. I want to say Clarissa Orlando, but I could be completely
We'll find
wrong.
out.
Yeah.
Yes. So The September House, what the woman finds is the beautiful Victorian home of her dreams, but she also finds that it is deeply, deeply haunted, and she decides that she's okay with it. She can live it. She can survive anything. And it's one of those like stealth books where it looks, at the beginning, it looks like just this very like tongue-in-cheek sort of funny take on the haunted house genre. And by the end, you're like, this was the deepest gut punch of a book ever, but like again in a very cathartic, loving way. So The September House was phenomenal.
Was there body horror things in that one? That sounds
I
fun.
mean,
I would like to read it, I think.
I just have such a high tolerance for things. I don't. It doesn't stand out to me, but it's. I don't want to say it's cozy horror because it actually does have like a very upsetting underlying theme, but again, like I feel like it's very cathartic, and I feel like it's a very compassionate book, if that makes sense. Yep. There's horror that's mean and there's horror that's compassionate, and this is a compassionate horror. And then out of left field, the Murderbot Diaries. I
was talking about those with somebody, I think.
They're novellas, so they're quick reads. They are the most fun. Murderbot is a I can't remember how it refers to itself. It uses it pronouns. And it basically is a amalgamation of human parts and machine that was created to be a security unit that people could buy or rent. It's property essentially. And what it loses is its control aspect. It undoes the control code so that it can actually be its own person, its own creature. And the stories are super fun, but also again, just like deeply compassionate and fascinating ideas of, you know, what it is to be sentient, what it is to be a person as opposed to an object. Really, really fun, really good. I think there are 5 of them, I want to say, but again, they're novellas, so super quick reads, really, really fun. Murderbot Diaries.
Okay, good.
Thank you for the recommendations.
Yes. Okay, well, that kind of brings us to the end of this episode. It ran pretty long, but you were just so much fun to talk to that we didn't want to stop.
Awesome to talk to you a lot. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And
thank you so much for having me, and thank you for talking to me about Mr. Magic. Like I said, I don't often get to like really get into things, and so it was fun for me.
Well, good. You answered some of our questions, I think, and it was fun knowing where it started.
Yeah.
But anyway, so thank you, Kiersten White. Do you want to do our cheesy thing? We have a cheesy thing that we do at the end of our episodes this season, and so I'm going to say thanks for joining us for Read, and then Daniel's going to say return, and then we're all going to say repeat.
Okay.
It's more fun if you have to tell people how to do it in the episode rather than just like launch into it. So, okay. Well, and that takes us to the end of another episode of Read,
Return,
Repeat. All right. Thank you, Kiersten.
Thank you.
Looking for an easy way to keep track of your ReadICT challenge progress? Check out the Beanstack app. With Beanstack, you can participate in library reading challenges, log reading activities, and even win prizes. You can access the app either through the Apple or Google Play stores or on a desktop computer by visiting wichitalibrary.beanstack.org. If you are participating in the ReadICT challenge, every month you log a book, you will be entered into a drawing for a chance to win a cool bookish-themed prize. For more information on Beanstack, visit wichitalibrary.org/Beanstack.
We covered a lot of ground in that
episode.
Yeah,
she's a really interesting person to interview, and she had so much to say about everything, and I loved hearing every bit of it. Yeah. So smart.
Very long episode, but I think it was we had to talk about it. We had to dive in.
Yeah,
Daniel.
I'm glad that I was able to go over my abandoned refrigerator.
You never knew you were going to need that ever. You never knew it.
Yeah.
But let's take this episode out and thank everybody that needs to be thanked.
Big shout out to Kiersten White for being on our show. That was really awesome. And also shout out to the podcast team for helping us with that. Thank you so much.
It's a big group effort. A list of the books discussed in today's episode can be found in the accompanying show notes. To request any of the books heard about in today's episode, or TV shows, or movies, go ahead and visit wichitalibrary.org or call us at 261-8500.
To participate in the ReadICT Reading Challenge, please visit wichitalibrary.org/ReadICT. Stay connected with other ReadICT participants on the ReadICT Challenge Facebook page. Find out what's trending near you, post book reviews, look for local and virtual events, and share book humor with like-minded folks. To join the group, search #ReadICT Challenge on Facebook and click join.
And don't forget to log your books in the reading tracker app Beanstack. Each month that you log a book in the challenge, you're eligible to win fun prizes. If you need assistance signing up or you're logging books and you're having any trouble, just give us a call. You can reach us on chat or stop by your nearest branch.
You can follow this podcast through the Spotify app or stream episodes on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe and share with all your friends. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.